Part 60. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 592. After reading Captain Chen Ling's report, Batty tapped his forehead. It's a pity that such an excellent person was killed by Amos's heart disease. Judging from Chen Ling's resume, she not only inherited her father's intelligence and her mother's athletic ability, but also was devoted to Amos. Amos was always afraid. Afraid that Chen Ling would find out that all her family members died at Amos' hands. Afraid that Chen Ling would find out that the man she had always called her adoptive father was actually her enemy. Although all the evidence was destroyed, Batty had the privilege to photocopy these two documents from the dusty filing cabinet of the Masonic Society. This information cannot be found anywhere. Therefore, no matter how powerful Captain Chen Ling is, he cannot find out his own life experience. She thought she was an abandoned baby. But Amos was still afraid. No matter how difficult and life-threatening the task Amos gave Chen Ling, she could complete it successfully. When she completed the difficult task, smiled, and waited for her adoptive father to praise her, I'm afraid Amos was scared to death. She was getting better and better, stronger and stronger, and it seemed that she would never hit the ceiling. Amos finally gave in. He designed to get rid of Chen Ling. Others thought that Amos took action because Chen Ling wanted to be free. In fact, he had wanted to do it for a long time, but he just hadn't found the right time. But what if he killed her? Batty pouted. If Chen Ling died, would Amos be free? 28 years of vigilance and fear had become a demon in his heart. Even if Chen Ling had turned into a pool of rotten meat, Amos would still be frightened by her name and couldn't sleep or eat, and even got sick and could only sleep with medicine. Batty sneered and threw the two reports in his hand into the fireplace next to him. The flames licked the paper, and the ink on the paper added to the fire. He was overthinking. Neither Captain Chen Ling nor the little star Chen Ling would pose any threat to Heji. Fang Wenjian was attracted by her beauty, she was indeed a beauty. Batty concluded. The charcoal in the fireplace made a beeping sound. Soon, the two reports turned into a pile of ashes and mixed together, without any distinction between you and me. Asterisk. Nolan, who was sitting in the restaurant, paid the bill 10 minutes after Chen Ling left. Finally, with the waiter's enthusiastic welcome to visit next time, he straightened his collar and walked out of the restaurant slowly. He drove an old silver car with an old age and rushed to the city. In less than half an hour, the car slowly drove into an old house on the corner of a certain avenue. After parking the car, Nolan took out the key, opened the door, and then closed it. An old man was sitting in the room, wearing reading glasses and reading a newspaper. The old man Nolan pretended to be was almost exactly the same as this old man. The old man was not surprised at all, but smiled at Nolan. Nolan was in a hurry and only had time to say hello to the old man. He straightened his hunched back, opened his broad shoulders, tore off the human skin mask on his face, stuffed it into his bag, and quickly took off the old man's clothes and put them on the back of the chair. After Nolan put the restaurant receipt on the table, he saluted the old man and rushed into the hidden basement under the stairs. This basement was built during World War II. There is a secret passage below to avoid air raids during wartime. At the other end of the secret passage is Dr. Ken's house. Nolan just came out of the secret passage and heard the door ring. Another Nolan walked in from outside, dressed as Dr. Ken. Without time to greet, Nolan helped Dr. Ken pack his medical bag and threw Dr. Ken and the human skin mask he tore off into the kitchen garbage disposer. After being crushed, it rushed into the sewer. Dr. Ken took the time to change his clothes into a white coat. The two cooperated well and tacitly. In less than 3 minutes, they walked out of the room. There was a car parked at the door, and the two got in the car and drove towards Amos's mansion. No one spoke for the first 2 minutes after the car started. Dr. Ken sat in the back seat and looked at Nolan's back suspiciously. He asked, "Hey, man, did you encounter something happy?" "Is it so obvious?" Nolan did not deny it. "I'm almost confused by you. This is a matter of the Rangers. Why don't you ask your team members, but ask me for help?" Going around in such a big circle, Dr. Ken asked sharply. Nolan rarely asked Dr. Ken to help. Nolan had to keep a distance from Dr. Ken so as not to cause trouble for Dr. Ken. Because, this team member is very mysterious. I am sure he does not belong to any of my team. If the members of the special forces are mobilized, there will be no way to go secretly, and it may cause trouble for the other party. So, Dr. Ken asked, "Who did you meet?" "Your happy expression makes me a little creepy." Nolan glanced at his old friend in the rearview mirror, and suddenly grinned with 2 rows of white teeth, revealing a bright smile. "I went to see my Captain Chengling. Thank God, she is not dead. She is still alive." Dr. Ken smiled and looked at Nolan's image in the rearview mirror calmly. Then, he began to kick Nolan's seat back without warning. Kick, and a word pops up: "I want to get off. Right here. Right now. You're a humming hopeless lunatic." The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 593. Dr. Ken's sudden explosion of hair startled Nolan. Although Dr. Ken usually puts on a bit of a show-off, his mood is particularly stable. This is the first time Nolan has seen Dr. Ken blow up his hair so quickly and completely. Nolan was kicked forward and backward, trying hard to hold onto the steering wheel while shouting, "Hey! Ken, stop kicking. Ken, I'm not crazy, stop." Dr. Ken, who was furious, could not calm down at all. While cursing, he used a series of Pegasus and Meteor kicks. After the car twisted several SS on the road, Nolan stopped the car on the side of the road. He couldn't send Dr. Ken to treat Amos like this. Unexpectedly, as soon as the car stopped, Dr. Ken quickly pulled off the seat belt and then reached out to pull the door. Nolan reacted quickly and raised his hand to lock the car door. Dr. Ken could not leave, but he did not give up. Instead, he lowered the car window and shouted outside, "Help, there is a patient here, ugh." Pedestrians in 2s and 3s on the road cast curious glances at their car. Nolan unbuckled his seat belt, leaned half of his body into the back seat, covered Dr. Ken's mouth with one hand, and closed the glass window with the other hand. "Calm down, old man." Nolan had to use force to stop the struggling Dr. Ken. But he couldn't use too much force for fear of hurting him. "Very tough." Nolan yelled, "Ken! Look in my eyes, I'm not crazy. I can't speak with you like this, okay?" Dr. Ken stopped struggling. He looked at Nolan. The eyes of this suave doctor were filled with desperate compassion. "Don't look at me like that," Nolan said. "Ken, I'm not crazy, really, please, calm down and listen to me. We have limited time. Nolan has a pair of very beautiful, very clear blue eyes. It's easy to trust him." Finally, Dr. Ken nodded. Nolan hesitantly let go of his hand, but he did not immediately relax his vigilance. Instead, he waited for 2 seconds to confirm that Dr. Ken would not do anything drastic again, and then he sat back in the driver's seat. "Explain it," Ken said. Nolan was a little confused. How to explain it? He organized his words briefly before saying, "Do you still remember why Jichenjio came to the United States?" Ken nodded. "She said at that time that there was a Chinese female star, also named Chengling, and she asked me to confirm if she was my captain dash." Ken frowned. Nolan continued, "The person who met me at noon today was her. She told a lot of secret things that only the captain and I knew, and she also knew everything about our Rangers. I can be sure that she is my captain. Ken suddenly laughed. Laughing loudly. After laughing, he said, last night, Amos went crazy and insisted that he was followed by Cheng Ling's ghost. Today you come to tell me that the actress is your captain? I am a doctor and I am interested in the human body. The structure is very familiar. There is no way that the female star and your captain are the same person. This cannot be faked. Nolan choked up. Cheng Ling didn't explain it in detail to him, so he didn't know how to refute. He could only say, I know, it sounds crazy, but the captain said that her soul is still alive for that girl. Because time was limited, she only explained this. Her soul went to an actress with the same name. Oh, God, I should contact a Hollywood screenwriter to give it to you. Ken obviously couldn't accept it. You were deceived. Nolan said seriously, no, Ken. I am willing to guarantee with my own life that she will be my captain. Ken shut his mouth. The two looked at each other. Knock knock. There was a tapping sound on the car window. Outside the car, a policeman stood. Hey, what's wrong? The officer asked, his hand on his belt pistol. Who's calling for help? He looked back and forth at the two people in the car suspiciously. Dr. Ken adjusted his white coat and smiled at the policeman. It's okay, we were just arguing. The policeman confirmed again, are you sure there's nothing wrong with you? Nolan spread his hands and shrugged, I'm fine. Dr. Ken showed a row of white teeth to the police. Yes, sir, we are fine. The policeman frowned and took a step back, patted the car and said, then leave now. Only temporary parking is allowed here. Nolan started the car, then looked up in the rearview mirror. Dr. Ken's face was expressionless. At this moment, it was best not to continue arguing about the captain. Nolan simply changed the topic. Why is Amos looking for you? Dr. Ken doesn't want to talk to his good friend. But after a few seconds, he still said, it has to do with some news that John brought back. Marlene Taylor, Amos's little wife, called me crying and said that John had just come to see Amos. Unexpectedly, after just saying a few words, Amos became furious, and then he had a headache. He had taken a large dose of painkillers, but it had no effect at all. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 594. The painkillers are all gone now. Nolan was a little surprised. Yes, that is the most powerful painkiller. Dr. Ken said, if things continue like this, Amos will not have many days left. Nolan thought of Cheng Ling's words. He said, Ken, treat him seriously and let him live as long as possible. Why? You found out that your captain was not dead, so you decided to let him go, Ken said harshly. On the contrary, it is to allow him to better enjoy the consequences of his evil, so let him live longer. Nolan's voice became cold. Dr. Ken shrugged, as you wish. If possible, adjust his condition as soon as possible and hope he does not cancel his birthday party next Tuesday, Nolan said. If Amos' illness attacks frequently, he will most likely cancel the birthday party. Oh? What are you going to do at his birthday party? Dr. Ken asked keenly. It's not what I'm going to do. Well, someone prepared a grand gift for Amos. Ken said, your tone makes me think that Amos will not like that gift. The car turned the corner, and Amos's splendid manor came into view. The two stopped talking in tacit agreement. The car drove into the manor and drove along the road to the front of the villa. Marlene Taylor was standing in front of the house anxiously. As soon as she saw Nolan's car, her expression relaxed instantly. The car stopped. The moment Dr. Ken opened the car door, Amos roared like a lion and squeezed in through the open door. "Do you think this is funny?" The sound came from a room in the villa behind Marlene Taylor. The little wife's shoulders shook and she urged nervously, "Dr. Ken, please go and have a look. They are discussing things in the study on the second floor." Nolan carried the first aid box for Dr. Ken. The two entered the villa one after another and followed the curved stairs to the outside of the study on the second floor. The study door is ajar. Amos stood behind his desk with a pained expression. He grabbed his scalp with both hands, as if trying to get the headache out of his scalp. The veins on his forehead were clustered, his eyes were round, his cheeks were red, and he roared, "Are you the messenger of the crow? Why do you always bring bad news?" And his nephew, John, sat with his legs crossed on the leather sofa opposite the desk. He looked indifferent and said dissatisfiedly, "The bad news is already here. It's just that I'm well informed and knew it in advance. I'll tell you when I get back. It's just you, is it possible that I won't tell you any bad news next time?" Dr. Ken coughed lightly. The two people in the study immediately stopped talking. Dr. Ken took his medical box from Nolan, opened the door and walked in. Nolan followed closely behind. Nolan was keenly aware that Amos's eyes lingered on him for a moment. "So, does he have a share in John's bad news?" Dr. Ken walked up to Amos with long legs, placed the white box heavily on the desk, and scolded Amos like a child, "Sir, if you continue to ignore my advice and do not follow it, doctor's advice, then there's no need for me to come here again." And Amos, a guy who has always had a bad temper, was not angry at all when he heard Dr. Ken's merciless criticism. Instead, he showed a stern expression and tried hard to smile. "Ah, respected Dr. Ken, my good doctor, it's my fault. I shouldn't be angry, let alone yell." His headache was severe and unbearable, which made his smile appear extremely ferocious. Seeing Amos's behavior, John curled his lips in disdain. People who are lingering on the sickbed will have a special emotion for their doctors. This kind of emotion can even surpass family affection at some times. No matter how powerful a person is, he will show a docile attitude towards his doctor, because the more this kind of person is, the more he is afraid of death and the more dependent he is on the doctor. Dr. Ken rolled up his sleeves, opened the medical box, and said, "Everyone who doesn't need to go out." "This is expelling John." John rolled his eyes, put his hands on the leather chair, and stood up. When he passed Nolan, he deliberately bumped Nolan with his shoulder. Unfortunately, Nolan was already prepared and tensed his shoulders and neck. John felt as if he had hit a big iron block, and he bared his teeth in pain. He said angrily to Nolan, "Don't stay here either. We are all irrelevant." Nolan glanced at Amos. "Sir, I..." Nolan started. Amos pressed his head, lay down on the couch, and said calmly, "Go out and wait." Dr. Ken had now completely won Amos's trust. When he treated Amos before, there were many bodyguards around him monitoring Dr. Ken's every move. "I'll wait outside the study door," Nolan said. "If you need something, just call me." After saying that, he walked out of the study and closed the door. John did not leave. He stood in the corridor, crossing his arms and supporting one leg on the wall, looking at Nolan provocatively. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 595. Nolan ignored him and stood straight by the door like a bodyguard. "Stop pretending, my uncle can't see you," John sneered. Nolan said nothing. He always had this attitude towards John. But John couldn't stand it anymore today. Because John felt that the day when he would take charge was coming. "I said, why are you acting like a lost dog?" John continued to attack Nolan, "as if my uncle is dead." Nolan responded. He turned slightly to look at John and said calmly, "I have always been like this. However, I am really worried about Mr. Amos's health. But you, dear Mr. John, you seem quite happy. Are you so happy because Mr. Amos' condition has worsened and may even be life-threatening? John's feet slipped as he leaned against the wall, and he became angry when his thoughts were exposed. What are you talking about? Isn't it? Mr. Amos' condition has worsened in the past few days. Everyone who cares about him is very anxious. Only you. Nolan took a step closer to John and looked down at John. Your smile is too obvious. Do you really think Mr. Amos didn't see it? Or is he being tolerant and not caring? John's expression hardened. Nolan said, although Mr. Amos has always regarded you as the only heir. But now, Amos's son is about to be born, it is legal to check the gender of the fetus in foreign countries. Shouldn't you be anxious? Yours the position of successor will be replaced by someone else. John opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Nolan smiled inexplicably. Or, the newborn is not a threat to your status? Why? Does the newborn have different emotions for you? You look like you have a chance to win, and why? Woolen cloth. Nolan asked several questions in succession, making John's face look even worse. He ignored it. Everyone knew that he had coveted Uncle Amos' position for a long time, and Amos had indeed groomed him as his successor. Now, Amos has a child, and John, who has been robbed of his inheritance position, should show anxiety, anger, jealousy, and worry. There is absolutely no way he is as relaxed and comfortable as he is now. Is Amos suspicious? John was panicking. Nolan looked at himself with an expression that understood everything. John used a vicious tone, pretending to be panicked, and yelled at Nolan, I've told you many times, I hate the tone of your words and the way you look at me. Just wait until I become Joey's master. The first thing I have to do is drive you out. Nolan raised his eyebrows. Really? I'm looking forward to that day. Unfortunately, maybe that day will never come. John's face turned red with anger, and he no longer crossed his arms or put one foot on the ground. He yelled a little rudely, no matter what happens, I am his nephew, and you, an unfaithful dog, will be abandoned by the owner. Do you think the new owner you found will accept second-hand goods? Nolan looked at John's stupid face and thought, oh, it's a scam. John speaks of unfaithfulness and new masters. Nolan only thought of one person, Mr. L. No, he should be called Mr. Fang now. In this way, John didn't know where he knew about his contact with Mr. Fang. Mr. John, you are wrong. I have only one master. Moreover, my master will not abandon me. Because he will know that I did not betray him. If someone does betray him, it will never be me. John clenched his back teeth tightly. Why did this guy Nolan say that? Did he know something? Wait a minute. Nolan raised his finger and waved it in front of John's stupid nose. You said something wrong. What? I'm not Amos's dog. My nose is not that sensitive. If Amos wants to find any evidence, he will definitely send his real dog to look for it. Nolan looked around and lowered his voice and said, perhaps they are already secretly looking for suspicious traces. Kali, another of Amos's mysterious powers. John and Amos are as close as father and son, but Amos has always refused to reveal the information about the shepherd's team. Could it be that the sheepdog really started to search him? Did he reveal any flaws? No wonder, he kept feeling that someone was observing him in the dark these days. Thinking of this, John became more and more gloomy. Just then, footsteps came from the stairs. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 596. John and Nolan looked over at the same time. A woman wearing a light yellow dress and with a big belly appeared at the corner of the stairs. It was Marlene Taylor. She was nearly 8 months pregnant. Because of her good maintenance, her skin was white and rosy. Her charm was not reduced by pregnancy at all, but she had a different style. She was seen walking from the other end of the corridor with a plate of fruit. Nolan took a step back to avoid suspicion, nodded to Marlene, and looked out the window. She nodded to Nolan, and then said to John affectionately, "Little John, Auntie brought you some fruit, don't always get angry with your uncle." John always liked Marlene to call him that. When the two flirted in private, they would call each other Little John and Auntie. In front of outsiders, there would be a special secret excitement when they called each other that way. Looking at the undisguised lust on Marlene's face, John's face suddenly darkened. This big-breasted, brainless woman. He had warned her to keep her distance. But she didn't care at all and repeatedly came to him to show her affection. Amos already suspected that Marlene was unfaithful, and the sheepdog might be watching him in the dark. "Get lost. I don't want your fruit plate." John raised his hand and knocked Marlene Taylor's fruit plate to the ground. Whole grapes, cherries, blueberries, and fruits cut into small cubes were scattered all over the floor. The metal fruit plate made a violent clinking sound on the marble floor tiles. Marlene Taylor didn't expect to be treated so rudely, and her beautiful olive green eyes were instantly filled with tears. The door of the study opened. Amos held a small white bottle in his hand, pressed it under his nose, and appeared behind the door with a gloomy face. He looked at the tears in Marlene Taylor's eyes, then looked at John, who looked flustered, and frowned as he crushed the grapes that rolled down to his feet. Amos said, "John, this is your aunt. Shouldn't you thank her for the fruit she prepared for you? Why are you so rude to her?" Marlene Taylor cried out in grievance. John felt as panicked as if he was caught having an affair with someone else. "No, Uncle, I don't like fruit. Sorry, I'm not in a good mood." The corridor fell into a strange silence. Amos rubbed his temples, not knowing what he was thinking. Nolan looked out the window, trying to distance himself from the matter. Only his little wife, who was unaware of the situation, sobbed softly, which seemed particularly strange. Dr. Ken muttered in dissatisfaction in the study. Amos finally spoke up, "John, shouldn't you go and deal with the trouble on Gas Avenue?" "Oh yes, Uncle, I'll go and deal with it now." John was shocked and turned away. After taking 2 steps, John remembered something. He stopped and turned to Amos and said, "Uncle, you must cooperate with Dr. Ken's treatment and recover as soon as possible." Amos snorted, turned back to the study, and closed the door. Marlene Taylor wiped the tears from her cheeks with a handkerchief, turned around and left with her big belly. This is the chaos of the upper class. Nolan felt bored and wanted to leave. But he couldn't. Amos didn't allow him to leave. So, Nolan could only stand outside the door, watching the servants clean up the mess on the floor, watching the sunlight coming in from the window, moving from one brick to another. When the sunlight completely disappeared from the floor tiles, the door of the study opened again. It was Dr. Ken who opened the door. He said, "Mr. Amos asked you to come in." Nolan kept standing, and after slightly moving his stiff limbs, he walked in. Amos sat back on the leather sofa and said to Dr. Ken, who was packing his medical kit, "Thank you, doctor. I'm sorry to have you stay at my house for one night." Dr. Ken said sincerely, "You are not in good health now, and it is my duty to stay. Still in the old room. If you need anything, just tell the servants." Dr. Ken packed his medical kit and left. Amos leaned back on the sofa, closed his eyes and dozed off. The study was quiet for a while. Nolan broke the silence, "Sir." Amos did not open his eyes, kept leaning back, and asked, "Nolan, are you satisfied with your current life? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 597. Amos gets right to the point. There's no need to beat around the bush when talking to someone like Nolan. I'm satisfied now, sir, Nolan replied. He emphasized the word now. Amos understood what he meant. Did you start looking for a way out because you were worried about the future? No, sir, I am not looking for a way out. I will find a way to make my current life last longer, Nolan said. Amos was silent for a while, then he suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Nolan standing under the light. He asked, How did you meet Fang Wenjian? Where did you meet him? Sir, I have heard of Fang Wenjian for a long time. I have always wanted to get to know him, but I never had the chance. It wasn't until I went on a mission to Golden Island this year that I met him at a dock bar in Country Y. What is it about him that deserves your attention? Amos asked. You should know that Fang Wenjian is an antique dealer and he has many legendary treasures. Amos nodded and motioned for Nolan to continue speaking and not stop. I heard that he had in his hand a treasure of the ancient Chinese emperor, a medicinal herbal formula. This Chinese emperor was an infatuated person. After the death of his beloved woman, he often missed her and often couldn't sleep well. He also had nightmares, and finally suffered from a very severe headache, which often occurred and was extremely painful. His subjects searched for famous doctors all over the world, and finally found a doctor with good medical skills who wrote a medicinal herb for the emperor. Formula. The emperor was cured of his headache after taking these herbs. This herbal formula has cured many people's headaches. I heard that ancient Chinese medicine is very miraculous. I want to find it to treat your illness. Amos thought that Nolan was a tough warrior, cold-blooded and cold-faced, and rarely cared about others. Unexpectedly, Nolan would be so serious about finding a treatment plan for himself. Nolan continued, So, I met him at the bar and asked him to give me the recipe. Of course, I was told no. I said I would give him all my savings in exchange. But he still disagreed. He said he was not short of money. I asked him to make conditions. He asked to take him to the Golden Island to participate in the auction. In exchange, he would give me the formula. It is said that there was an antique at the Golden Island auction that he was very interested in. After much thought, I agreed to him. But he asked me to keep it secret. Later, I took him to the island. Unfortunately, an accident occurred and the auction was not held smoothly. However, he kept his promise and gave me the formula. He said that what he gave me was only the first stage herbal formula. If the first stage worked, he would give me the second stage formula. I questioned it. I didn't know where to find him. He said we would meet again. I don't dare to give you this formula rashly. So, I first went to Latin Beauty's herbal shop and the Chinese medicine shop in Chinatown to find the medicinal materials in the formula. After cooking them according to the formula, I gave the medicine to some headache patients eat it to collect experimental data. Amos unconsciously changed from a sitting posture to a leaning forward posture. He asked, What's the result? It's very useful. I can show you the recovery information of those patients, Nolan said. After saying this, Nolan showed an embarrassed expression, But what? I can't find Mr. Fang. I can't find it anywhere. I can't get the second stage formula, that's why I haven't told you about it. Amos laughed. As soon as he laughed twice, he bent down and pressed his temples. Laughing like this also gives him a headache. After calming down for a while, he said to Nolan, My good Nolan. I knew you were a loyal person. Of course you can't find Mr. Fang, because he has been busy with big things recently, busy joining the United Freemasonry. In fact, last night John and I went to the White Club to attend his initiation ceremony. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 598. Amos said angrily again, an outsider knows how to care about me, but my nephew wishes I would die now. He never asked about my condition, nor did he help me find any famous doctors. I trained him wholeheartedly, I arranged a lot of good jobs for him, he could make money and win a good reputation, but he never knew how to be grateful. Amos complained. Nolan was not in a position to comment on the disputes within the Joyce family. After Amos complained, he felt that the headache that had finally subsided was about to come back, so he stopped. He pressed his forehead and said to Nolan, "Nolan, thank you for everything you have done for me, but I can't take medicine at will for my current condition. It's better to have enough medical data, and it must be approved by Dr. Ken." Nolan nodded, "I know. The medical data is in my apartment computer. I will prepare all the information for you and Dr. Ken." Nolan contacted Fang Wenjian to get the herbal formula for treating headaches. This was the captain's idea. She said she would prepare everything. Amos would not believe Nolan just because of 2 sentences. He had to produce sufficient evidence. Amos was very satisfied with Nolan's answer. "Well, as for Fang Wenjian, I will find a suitable time to take you to see him." Nolan nodded. Amos was physically and mentally exhausted after saying so much. He leaned on the sofa again and closed his eyes. Nolan saw this and said, "Do you have anything else to tell me? I still have some things to deal with." "Wait," Amos' voice contained resistance and fear, "I have one more thing." But this time Amos did not move for a long time, closed his eyes, as if he was asleep. Nolan knew that Amos was not asleep. He was having a fierce ideological struggle, his breathing was heavy, and his heartbeat was fast. Nolan waited quietly. After a while, Amos opened his eyes and pointed to his desk. "There is a white envelope on my desk, there are a few photos in it," he said. Nolan walked to the desk and saw a white envelope, which was buckled on a pile of documents. Nolan picked up the envelope, walked back to the sofa, and handed it to Amos. Amos did not reach out to take it. He said, "Open it and take a look." The person in the photo was the captain he had met today. Nolan pretended to be confused and asked, "Who is this woman?" "She is Fang Wenjian's lover. I met her at the dance yesterday." Amos said, his expression was very strange, "Her name is also Chen Ling. This is what John told me." Amos finally understood why he heard Chen Ling's name yesterday. Nolan then looked down at the photo. The woman in the photo, wearing a red dress and smiling brightly, did not look like the captain of the special agent at all. To be honest, if the captain had not admitted it himself, he would not have believed that the woman in the photo was the captain. After a while, Nolan turned the photo around and said to Amos, "Sir, I don't understand why you let me see the photo of this woman. Don't you think it's a coincidence?" Amos' voice was full of fear. He didn't dare to look at the woman in the photo, and his eyes quickly left the photo. The more he looked at it, the more he felt that the woman in the photo looked terrifying. "Sir, China has a large population, and it's normal to have people with the same name." "I understand." Amos swallowed hard. "In fact, I think I'm entangled by Chen Ling's evil spirit. Her evil spirit has been causing me trouble." "Trouble you?" Nolan shook his head repeatedly. "The captain is a person who clearly distinguishes between gratitude and resentment. You are her adoptive father and have raised her. Even if her soul still exists after her death, her soul should find a way to repay you, so how could she cause you trouble? The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 599. Amos was in trouble. Amos can't honestly say, "Hey, I killed Chen Ling, and I also killed Chen Ling's family. That's why I'm afraid of her evil spirit, right?" He racked his brains and finally found an excuse, "Because, I sent her to the drug lord, otherwise, she wouldn't have died." Nolan raised his voice, "Mr. Amos, what you said is wrong. As a member of the H Rangers, every time we go on a mission, we have the belief that we must die. This is our mission and responsibility. We don't resent the person who gave us the mission. Although the captain died, she also killed the drug lord and she completed her mission. She didn't resent anyone. Amos was speechless. For a moment, he forgot why he mentioned Cheng Ling to Nolan. Anyway, Amos changed the direction of the topic. My wife is pregnant, and she always said that she saw some phantoms and heard some hallucinations, which is not good for the development of the fetus, so, you help me. I'm going to find some reputable exorcists and I'm going to exorcise the evil spirits. Nolan didn't want to hire an exorcist. Before today, he was an out-and-out atheist. But now, he believes that there are forces in this world that are beyond human imagination and cannot be explained by science. It was this power that brought the captain back. What if the exorcist he once scorned actually had a detrimental effect on the captain's soul? He couldn't let Amos give up the idea of finding an exorcist. However, he could find some second-hand, bastard exorcists, preferably swindlers, so that he could complete the tasks assigned by Amos without putting the captain in harm's way. So, Nolan said, "Okay, sir, I will find the best exorcist for you." Amos breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want anyone to know about his appointment with an exorcist. Because this is really disgraceful. But Nolan really cares about himself, so you don't have to think too much about it with him. Also, help me check this little star's information. The more details, the better, Amos said. Okay, Sir, Nolan agreed, and then he showed a hesitant expression. There is one more thing. Amos saw that Nolan was hesitant to speak and said, Nolan, I hope you will tell me any thoughts you have and don't hide them in your heart. Nolan received encouragement from Amos, and then he spoke as if he had made up his mind. Sir, I hope you will be careful about the people around you. In addition, I hope you will not tell anyone about my transaction with Mr. Fang. This will help you see things clearly. Amos isn't that stupid. John and Nolan don't get along. John wanted to lend his hand to get rid of Nolan. Due to his identity and status, Nolan couldn't do anything to John. Nolan can only rely on Amos's strength. In this case, Nolan will do his best to protect himself and do things for himself. What Amos needs most now is loyal people. I understand. Don't worry, Amos said. He looked up at the time. If I don't go to rest, Dr. Ken will come and scold me again. Sir, you have a good rest, I'm leaving now. Nolan had already reached the door of the study when Amos called to him. Wait, he said, take those photos on the table with you. The woman in the photo had red lips, white teeth, and a bright smile, but the more Amos looked at it, the more frightened he became. He couldn't bear to have this woman's photo in the same space as himself. What if the woman's evil spirit crawls out of the photo while I'm asleep? Since he killed Cheng Ling, he got rid of everything around him that was or might be related to Cheng Ling. Even the Asian servants with black eyes were fired. If this photo is left in the house, he will not sleep well tonight. Nolan carefully put the photos in his pocket, and then took big steps to leave Amos home. He put his hand in his pocket and gently rubbed the edge of the photo with his fingers, thinking, where did the captain go after leaving the restaurant? What is she doing at this moment? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 600. Cheng Ling didn't go anywhere. She returned to the White Club with the White Club attendant. John Killen was waiting for Cheng Ling. His two uninvited guests had been sent away, and the two sides had agreed on a time to meet again. At least on the surface, they had become friends. Sweetheart, you're finally back. John Killen stood up from the lobby booth of the White Club, hugged Cheng Ling, who rushed over, and gave her an eager French kiss. The attendant Mark, holding a large number of shopping bags in his hands, waited for their passionate kiss to end. After the two kissed for a long time, John Killen finally let go of Chen Ling. He took out a stack of US dollars from his pocket and stuffed it into Mark's pocket. "Send the things to my car," he said to the attendant, and said to Chen Ling, whose cheeks were flushed, "Can I invite you to visit my manor? My manor has many beautiful collections, and I can also give you a few pieces dash. I would love to." "I feel so honored, Mr. Fang," Chen Ling said, kissing John Killen's face. Her eyes were filled with greed, like a gold digger who had just gotten married. Many female attendants at the White Club cast envious glances at Chen Ling. This superficial woman was so lucky. John Killen held Chen Ling in his arms and walked towards the parking lot of the White Club. The manor where he now lived was more than 100 kilometers away from the White Club, and it took about an hour and a half to drive there. The attendant had already put the shopping bags on the Rolls-Royce in the parking lot, and he opened the back door for Chen Ling. Chen Ling held up her skirt and sat on it. John Killen sat next to her. The person in charge of driving was the old driver of the Fang family, who had been providing services for the Fang family. He knew nothing about the Fang family and John Killen's identity, and was an ordinary person who worked honestly. After John Killen and Chen Ling sat down and the door was closed, the driver said, "Sir, Miss, we're off." The driver had good professionalism and did not show even the slightest surprise or curiosity about Chen Ling, who suddenly appeared. Yet John Killen responded lightly. The car slowly drove out of the White Club. John Killen picked up Chen Ling's hand, squeezed it, and said, "Did you have fun shopping today? I didn't accompany you, you won't be angry, right?" But in a corner where no one could see, he wrote on her palm with his thumb, "There are surveillance and listening equipment in the car." Chen Ling said coquettishly, "Next time, accompany me. I don't know what style of clothes you like me to wear." I was dazzled, and finally bought a few pieces at random. "I don't know if you think they are ugly." Chen Ling also scratched his palm with her thumb a few times. "Did Kasai cause you any trouble?" John Killen said, "I like whatever style you wear." He wrote, "Done. What about you?" Chen Ling, "You men are always so perfunctory, always saying that you look good in anything. It's really boring." She wrote, "Everything went well." John Killen said, "No fun? Our fun is to take off women's clothes." He wrote, "Was he shocked?" Chen Ling shyly cursed, "Oh, disgusting." He was shocked. John Killen pulled Chen Ling into his arms and kissed her. His fingers lifted the hem of her clothes, reached in, and wrote on her lower back, "Report the patient to him as soon as possible." The driver drove the car conscientiously and turned a deaf ear to the teasing of the two people behind. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 601. Once a man and a woman cross that line, kissing will happen frequently. However, Chen Ling and John Killen seemed to be glued together, but they did not feel each other wholeheartedly. Instead, they used each other's body as a writing board and communicated secretly. Chen Ling's hands went under the hem of his clothes and wrote on his angular abdominal muscles. "I have conveyed the patient data request to your father. He replied to me that he would have everything ready within a few hours. In addition, I noticed that the area around the club was under martial law. I guess this has something to do with the people hiding in the armor." John Killen continued to write on her smooth back, "When I sent Kasai and the others away, I noticed that the waiters were very busy. Based on the few words I heard, they should be preparing lunch for some big shot who lives in the club. Lunch is very demanding, and the ingredients are extravagant and pretentious." Chen Ling immediately replied, "The president is a hardcore food lover and very hypocritical, consistent with these 2 points. So." She paused for a while before continuing to write, "Unless there are other perverts of the same type in the United Freemasonry." After writing this, Chen Ling stopped kissing. She left his lips and turned her head to look at his red earlobes. The earlobes were dotted with small ruby earrings, which did not detract from his handsomeness, but instead added a touch of evil temperament. In this case, Brother Lan is not perfect, right? Chen Ling was still a little worried. John Killen knew what she was thinking. His hand was still on her back, and with a gentle force, he pushed her back into his arms. He wrote quickly on her back, "Don't worry about me, I will find a way to leave some more scars, but I'm worried that you are in danger." In psychology, there is a special imagination interest/hatred transfer effect. It means that people will extend their love or dislike for someone or something to someone or something that is closely related to the current thing. To sum up in a simple idiom, it is love the house and the bird. If the president is really interested in John Killen, he will also be interested in Chen Ling. What's even more frightening is that after Chen Ling appeared, John Killen became imperfect. The other party would definitely transfer his previous emotions to Chen Ling. John Killen didn't understand this until just now. He also realized that this was what Chen Ling wanted to achieve. John Killen was like walking on a rope between two cliffs. If he was not careful, he would fall into an abyss. The president's concern for him was very detrimental to John Killen. Chen Ling knew that she couldn't hide it from him, so she comforted him, "I'll be fine, I will protect myself." John Killen didn't write anymore, but hugged her tightly. The low-key and luxurious black car faced the afterglow and drove towards the Fang family manor. The two people in the back seat never separated and were stuck together. Every move, word, and deed of the two people in the car was captured by a hidden camera installed in the air vent and dutifully transmitted to a screen in a certain room of the White Club. In front of the screen, there was a high-end chair made of cowhide. Sitting in the chair was a pale man wearing dark blue silk pajamas. He is not tall, has narrow shoulders, a small Adam's apple, and a sinister expression. His slender fingers were holding the crystal-clear wine glass, and he stared at the two people on the screen who were intimately connected without blinking. None other than transgender Angel. His eyes wandered back and forth between John Killen and Chen Ling. Finally, his eyes rested on John Killen's left ear. The beautifully curved earlobe has a ruby earring. The earring originally belonged to the stupid woman in his arms who smiled stupidly. Like a perfect piece of snow, a red rose suddenly appeared. Although beautiful, it completely destroyed the integrity of the snow. Angel looked indifferently at the shy smiling Chen Ling on the screen. This stupid woman, what qualifications does she have to ruin this perfect snow field? Obviously only he, Angel, the only child of God who decides the fate of all humans, is qualified to end perfection. This stupid woman did something wrong. But it doesn't matter, he will punish her on behalf of the gods.